Hello friends, welcome to the lecture on loops. Today we are going to see how we can actually control the flow of our loops in Perl. When we say flow, we basically mean that how we can actually terminate a particular loop or how we can actually pass a particular iteration inside the loop. We look at each of these conditions in detail. So first we will consider the break statement. In Perl, we do not have break as a keyword. To break a particular loop, we use last as the keyword. So we'll quickly do a program. We'll quickly go ahead and write a live code. So whenever we use last as a statement, last statement inside a loop, it actually breaks that particular loop and it gives the control back to the calling program. So let us first write a small for loop which will just go ahead and print numbers from 0 to 10. So I'm saying $I is equal to 0 and $I is less than equal to 10, $I plus plus. Now what happens is inside this particular for loop, I'll say print number is, and I'll go ahead, I'll give a particular condition here. Let's say $I is less than, if $I is equal to 5, okay, then simply break out of the loop. So as I said, we'll use the last as a keyword to break out of the loop, and here I'm just simply going ahead and printing the $I value. Now what we'll do is we'll quickly go ahead and execute this particular program and we'll see what the output would look like. Okay, so what I'll do is here I'll quickly have a print statement before the last is executed, because if we write the print statement after the last, then automatically the print statement will also not get executed. So here I would say condition reached. Okay, so we'll quickly go through the program. What we have done is we have written a simple for loop traversing from 0 to 10. Inside that we have said if the value of I or the variable, the for loop variable is equal to 5, simply say condition is reached. Okay, terminate from this particular for loop. That is, this last belongs to this particular for loop, not just the if loop. If is not basically a loop, it is just a control structure. Do remember this. This last will terminate the loop, that is, in this case is a for loop. Once it terminates this particular for loop, it goes ahead and it gives the control back to the calling program. So this is our calling program. So what we'll do is we'll quickly write a print statement here, and I would say control is back here. Okay, now let us execute this particular program and see what the output would look like. So as I said, it has executed the for loop till the condition 5 was reached. Here in this case 5 was reached. It went here, it printed this particular statement, which was number is, as we know, we have applied a condition when the number is equal to 5, it says condition is reached, and it didn't executed anything that was after the last statement. So do remember clearly, whenever you use last statement, after the last statement has got executed, the control goes back to the calling program or to the outside of that particular for loop or that particular loop. So the control went from here to the main program because this was the innermost loop, or this is the only loop that was using the last statement. Now what if I have a for loop, for an outer for loop, which is simply traversing from 0 to 2. Let us quickly write this particular for loop and we'll see what the output would look like. And in this case, I'll simply say print iteration 1, iteration, I'll have a little indentation because that would help us understanding what we are trying to achieve, and it also helps your code to be a little cleaner. Now I'll simply say a print statement here, and inside this print statement what I'll do is I'll simply print the value of j. That's what we have done in our previous for loop. Now let's go ahead and execute this particular loop. Now this should work fine. So now if you can see the output, it's pretty clear or evident that the first iteration, that is 0, it continues till this particular innermost condition is reached, that is equal to 5. So it breaks here, it doesn't print this, but the control is not given back here. The control is given back to the outermost loop. So remember friends, last whenever you use from the loop where the last statement is used, it just gives the control back to the outer loop. In case there is no outer loop, it gives the control back to the calling program. So I hope this particular statement or how we use last inside a particular loop is pretty much clear. So in this case, the control is given back to the outermost loop. Then it goes ahead, increments the value of j, and the next iteration it again goes back inside this particular for loop. Again it reaches the condition, it executes the last statement, terminates the loop, gives the condition back to, or gives the control back to the outermost for loop. This happens till the value of j is less than or equal to 2. So basically 3 iterations. Once the iteration is completed, see, once you get 2 as your iteration, once the iteration has reached max, once the outermost condition or outermost loop condition has reached, it basically goes ahead and gives the control back to the calling program, and hence the statement control is back here is printed. Now let us go ahead and see how a next condition works. So what I'll do is I'll quickly copy our inner loop and we'll quickly write a piece of code to understand how continue would look like. So if I say continue here, probably I would say next as continue, or to actually pass a particular iteration in Perl, you have a keyword called as next. So now let's see what exactly the output would look like. So if I execute here, concentrate on this particular block of code here. So when we say continue or when we say next as a keyword, it says in this particular case number is condition is reached, then it goes on to say next. So basically we are not breaking out of the loop, we don't want to break out of the loop, but only for that particular condition we don't want to execute the part of the loop. What we want to do is we simply want to pass the control back to our inner loop, or back to the loop that to which the next belongs. So here, even in case of multiple loops, so let's say if my for loop, this particular for loop was enclosed in another for loop, next would not break the loop and give the control back to the outermost for loop. What it will do is it will simply go ahead and give the control back to the for loop which it belongs, and it does not execute the conditions, or it does not execute anything after the next statement, and gives the control back to the innermost for loop. So it is pretty clear, next does not terminate the for loop but does not execute the part of code or part of or anything that is after the next statement inside the for loop or inside any of these loops. So friends, I hope this is pretty clear how you can use next and last. Last will break from the loop that it is being called from. Next will actually pass that particular iteration. Remember friends, it will just pass the iteration and not the entire loop. So it will simply go ahead, pass that iteration, move to the next iteration, and then execute the loop as it is supposed to execute it. So this is how next and last work in Perl. These are very important keywords. Hope you have really got a hang of it. Thank you, and I'll see you at the next lecture.